Bang & Olufsen is one of those companies where I don't really have a great deal of experience with their product range. Back in the 1980s, I could never afford anything they sold, so I never really looked into it. However, recently I've discovered that they came out with a particular product which I would really not have associated with them as a company. I thought they were more high-end. This would perhaps have been below them. And the thing that I'm talking about is a boombox. I'm using the inverted commas there because it isn't really a boombox. It's a portable stereo radio cassette recorder. But still, not the kind of thing that I'd associate with Bang & Olufsen. They only brought out the one. They called it the Beosystem 10. It came out around about 1985, lasted on the market till 1990, so not a massive period of time, and they didn't follow it up with any other similar products. And I believe it cost around about £250 in the UK at the time it was out, which with an inflation calculator nowadays comes out to around about £600. So a pretty expensive little device. But since I found out about it very recently, I thought I should definitely try one of those just to see what a Bang & Olufsen boombox is like. So I picked one up from eBay, got it in this box. Let's have a look at it together and see what I think of this. Okay, now given that the most recent examples of these are around about 35 years old now, there's a lot of tatty looking ones doing the rounds on eBay. This one looked in good condition, but I don't know whether it's going to work or not. A lot of people will say that cassette decks are working just fine, and yet they've just had a look at it, they press play, it seems to spin, they think that's good enough. Yeah, very good packaging this. Look at that, it's good quality stuff for that. Not cheap. Another round of bubble pack. You know, I've got to say this must be one of the best packaged things I've ever bought off eBay, so I've got quite a bit of hope that it's going to be functioning as well. Imagine this is the kind of person that looks after their equipment. And there we go. Yeah, well, it does look to be in good condition. All these cloth speaker grills are undamaged. The antenna's still in one piece. Yeah, looking good so far. So the handle's fixed in place on there. I didn't realise that. So you've kind of got to look down through that part there, just past the handle. Okay, where's eject? Oh, there we go. Oh. Doesn't seem to like that, does it? A little bit stuck, that. Hopefully. Oh. I think it might have got caught on that a bit. Let's have a look. Yeah. It seems to be catching on this door at the bottom. Yeah, it'll open fine with that door open. But if it's closed, it fouls on it. Okay. What that's about. Doesn't look like it's been broken off at any point. It just comes a bit too high compared to the cassette door. That seems to be up a fraction. Anyway, enough about that. Let's pop some batteries in it and see if it works all right. It takes a total of 6 D cells. Just want to show you something on the bottom of this that's quite important. You can see here that this was made in Japan. Now, this is not a rebadged product from another company with a Bang & Olufsen badge stuck on the top of it. It was designed by them in Denmark. It was spec'd out how they wanted it, but then they shipped off the manufacturer to Japan to make it cheaper. Now, I believe quite a few of the components in here are Sanyo components, but that doesn't mean this is a Sanyo device. It just means that there's some of their chips and things in here. Just like you open up a computer, you might see something from Texas Instruments. It doesn't mean that they manufacture the whole thing. Right, let's try turning on the radio first of all. Well, that's working. Well, how do you tune it in? Oh, hold on. This is weird. The tuning wheel is back there. I suppose I'll lift over the top, do I? I think we'll need to pull this antenna up. Hold on. You know what I've done here? I'll just show you. There are 3 presets for FM, and those are tuned in using the controls under that flap on the front. We'll look at that in a moment, but I should have pressed this FM at the end, so let's do that. So now this control at the back will affect the tuning. Let's turn it up a bit and see if we can pick anything up. Oh, there we go.
Samsung.com by the 6th of February.
Yeah, so it's an interesting tuning control here. It moves up and down like so, so you can do large movements very quickly, But then once you've got it into a certain position, turning the wheel on the back of it will allow you to make finer adjustments.
When I was 6 years old, I broke my leg.
Good. Yeah, so you've got this wheel on here, which allows you to move it up and down with a thumb, but you can actually just slide the whole mechanism up and down and then use that as a fine tune. I think that's quite clever. Right, let's try that cassette deck. Pop a cassette in and see if it will play. I'm not entirely confident in this, but we'll find out. So, that's play. Oh, it's working. What a shocker. Now, it's one of those inverted mechanisms where you've got play pointing to the left. So it means that this one next to it that points to the right is rewind. That's fast forward. But I'm happy to see that they're all operating properly. So it's working as well as I could possibly hope. And it sounds all right too. Now, make no mistake about it, this is a very basic cassette mechanism, the kind of thing you'd expect to find on a cheap device nowadays in a way, although I'm sure this is much better quality. But as far as the feature set goes, yeah, just a very simple one. Doesn't have auto reverse, doesn't have any kind of Dolby noise reduction, and that flew in the face of the other products in the Bang & Olufsen range at the time. Anything that had a cassette in it in their range when this was out had auto reverse and Dolby noise reduction. You've got to remember that Bang & Olufsen weren't just playing around with a cassette, they were instrumental in developing it. They came out with HX Pro. So they were really quite into cassettes. I'm surprised they didn't give this any more features than it has, although I'm happy to see the features it does have work just fine. This rather slim case design makes this ideal for pushing up flush against a wall, minimising the space it takes up on a countertop. And the sound quality isn't diminished by these compact dimensions. It produces a more pleasant sound than many of the other small portables I've tried. The flat back on here also lends itself to this being wall mounted, and B&O sold a bracket for this purpose that hooked underneath the handle. Now you can see inside the cassette door here, they've got a bit of a cheat sheet for anyone who's unfamiliar with the cassette deck, so you get the idea that they were aiming this at the less sophisticated user. For example, to play a tape, you put it into the tape mode and press play. And to cue, you fast forward and play at the same time. Similarly, for review, it's the opposite control. But let me just show you how that sounds. So we'll just cue to the next track. There we go. It's a simple system. It doesn't have auto track skip, but this is all you need. I mean, if you wanted to get back to the start of this track, hold that one down. There we go. We're at the beginning again. It's a very simple system to operate. And it's the kind of thing that I think my mum would have appreciated. I mean, she had a little stereo cassette player in the kitchen for listening to her tapes of classical music and Radio 3 and Classic FM. And this would have done just fine for that. She didn't want auto reverse or Dolby or any of that kind of business. This is right up her street. And I think that's the kind of customer that they must have been aiming at with this kind of thing. Although my mum had a device that cost about 40 quid from Sharp, not 250 quid from Bang & Olufsen. Let me show you what these things are down here. Okay, well, balance, of course we know what that's for. It's working just fine as well. There's no crackles on the potentiometer. Above there, acoustic mode, well, that's just a tone control. More bassy to the left, more treble to the right. And then we've got this wide stereo mode over here as well, which was activated when I opened this up because no doubt the previous owner liked to listen to that one. I always prefer wide stereo as well, but if we want, we could go to mono, and that's more for using the radio and picking a better signal up on FM in a fringe area. And then down at the bottom here, we've got our tape type selector. And that's pretty much it. It's a very simple thing. Over here on the right, though, we've got our tuning wheels for the different frequencies. You can see 88 up to 108 on the right here. So if we pop it back into the radio mode, and I'll go into the FM1 preset. So we're listening to this one at the moment now. And to tune this in, there's a little wheel above it. So I should be able to tune that into something. There we go.
The A55 at McGull in Merseyside on Wallasey there.
That you love me.
big reactor in Oxfordshire.
No, that's magnetic confinement.
Ah, so you're working with lasers.
No.
I'm still rather befuddled about these doors though, why this top one is getting fouled on the bottom one. And when that's open, that ejects just fine, but when that's closed, the two things join together here in the middle. And they're both plastic. It's not like there's any metal involved in any of this. They've got plastic hinges at either end. I thought it might be something to do with this part up here, because you can lift this up and take that off. And that gives you access to the azimuth adjustment screw there. But no, it's nothing to do with that. For the time being, I'm just opening that one up every time I want to eject a cassette. I mean, it's not like the end of the world, but I wonder what's happened there. Has the plastic expanded? I suppose I could get a Dremel out and adjust it by cutting the top off this bottom door, but I think that would look rather messy. So I'm just going to leave it as it is. But yeah, I'm confused as to why it no longer fits, because no doubt when it was new, it fitted perfectly. Now, it's really quite a basic device. As far as the feature set goes, it's really quite unremarkable. What it's doing, though, it's doing well. It's just not doing an awful lot above and beyond what you could get on any basic radio. The fact you've got 3 FM presets here would be enough for me. And in fact, I suppose you could class it as having 4, because you just leave the other one in the position that you want, and then you flip between the 3 that you've set at the front. I'll show you one thing, though, that it does that I was not expecting, and it's around here on the back. In fact, I suppose you could say there's a couple of unusual things about this, because at the bottom here we've got our speaker outputs, not something you get on a portable stereo radio cassette of this size normally. And that means, of course, you could attach up external speakers to this, forego the internal ones for better sound quality. Above there we've also got a 1/4-inch headphone jack on the side here. But no, the important thing I wanted to show you, the thing that was different and unusual about this particular device, is this section here. Now you can see we've got our standard RCA line level inputs. So you could attach up an external tape player and record it to the internal tape recorder on here, or you could attach up a CD player, for example. But if you were to move it into this position over here, this switch, it's labelled up as Phono on the right, which means it's activating a phono stage. So therefore, you could attach up a record player, which needs a phono preamp, and now you can play your record player through this. That's an unusual feature to see on a little device like this. It does appear on some larger boomboxes, but to see a phono stage on a little portable radio cassette is unusual. Okay, for a bit of fun, I just thought I'd put the wout and flutter meter on this. I don't know whether this device has been serviced recently, whether it's got new belts in it. I'd imagine probably not. I think it probably needs a full service, lubrication, new belts, all the rest of it. But I wanted to see where we're at the moment. And as far as speed goes, well, it's running around about 1% slow. And as far as wout and flutter goes, well, it's running around about 0.15 to, say, 17% wout and flutter, which isn't bad for this thing, because in its specs originally it was supposed to be just less than 0.25%. So it's round about where it always should be, although the speed could do with a little bit of adjustment, but perhaps that's just this particular tape that I'm playing at the moment, or maybe it's because it's on batteries. In fact, let's find out about that. I'm going to plug the mains power into this and see if it speeds up at all. It shouldn't do, but it does happen sometimes. So let's pop the power in and see if this alters at all. So now we're running off mains power, and no, not affected anything, still running at the same speed. Now I thought I should really try this phono stage, so I had a look online as to what the original cable looked like that went into this little slot here, and it turns out it's just a spade connector. And I've got one of those for my record player, so I can just push that into there and it grips onto it. I think inside here we've got 2 little metal leaves, a little bit like the end of a bulldog clip. So you push in between those and they're spring-loaded to close on that. So it's holding it well, that. Let's have a look at the record player I'm using. It's a Technics SLJ300R, and it does require a phono stage, so it's a good one to use with this. So I'll just switch that on. Oh, got to remember, switch it into the phono mode as well. Well, it does work. It doesn't go particularly loud, and if you go too high on the volume scale, it gets quite thin and distorted and loses all the bass, so you're better off leaving it lower down on here. But just to demonstrate that the phono stage is working, if I reach behind here and move that switch into the line level position, you can't hear anything at all. course, the phono stage is amplifying it a lot more than the line level would do. So we'll just flip it back into the phono position. So yeah, I'd imagine when this was new, it probably worked better than this. I suppose I should test recording. So let's record off the radio. We'll put it on now and then press record.
Did, of course. It's quite fun. It's the game. Everyone believed I was a faithful because I had been for so long. And then when I became a traitor, it was like, oh, I've got...
Boring rubbish. Right, let's try rewinding that and have a listen to it.
Everyone believed I was a faithful because I had been for so long, and then...
Of course, there's no take counter on here, and it's got automatic level control on the recording, so limited functionality, but it works. It's also got microphones in here, stereo mics. Okay, so I'm just going to talk at the front of this now and see if it's picking up any kind of motor noise along with my voice. Sometimes these things are quite noisy internally, and that comes through to these microphones. Let's have a listen. Okay, so I'm just going to talk at the front of this now and see if it's picking up any kind of motor noise along with my voice. Sometimes these things are quite noisy internally, and that comes through to these microphones. Let's have a listen. Yeah, not bad. Quite a low level on there, but I'm sat a couple of feet away from this thing, I suppose. But yeah, decent recording. Now, I'm not going to open mine up today because I believe it's a bit of a fiddly operation, and since it's currently working perfectly, I don't want to risk breaking anything. However, you can see that whilst it's a simple and chunky mech, it does have a lovely large metal flywheel on it, which will help keep the playback speed consistent. And unfortunately, large metal flywheels like that are something that you just don't find on your modern day cheapo boomboxes, which of course is reflected in the performance that they give. Okay, so it's a pleasant, simple, easy to use, somewhat unremarkable portable stereo radio cassette. I've really got very little negative to say about it. It does the job it's set out to do. I suppose the only point of contention, though, is with its original selling price. So in 1989, the Beosystem 10 cost £250. Meanwhile, a perfectly respectable, sharp radio cassette recorder with a roughly similar feature set cost around £45. Okay, so it doesn't have those 3 FM presets or the phono stage, and the build quality won't be as good. But if you want something in the kitchen for listening to your tapes or the radio, it'll do the job just fine, and at roughly a fifth the cost of the Bang & Olufsen. And if you take things in the other direction and see what you can get for the same price as the Beosystem 10, well, in this Argos catalogue from 1989, you had a choice of a few much larger, more powerful boomboxes with twin tapes, auto reverse, Dolby noise reduction, graphic equalisers, and a CD player. I know that if I'd have seen one of these in a shop window in the late 1980s with its price tag next to it, the first thing I'd have done would have been do a double take. I'd have been shocked at how expensive it was. And then I would have thought, well, who the heck's going to pay that for one of these? But then again, they weren't aimed at me. At that time, I was earning roughly £250 a month. So that's the same price as one of these cost. No, this wasn't for me. This was for a completely different class of customer. And you can see that from the manual, where it states that you might want to use the FM presets to store alternative frequencies for your favourite radio station when using this radio at your weekend cottage. Now, the kind of people who bought something like this, money probably wasn't much of a consideration to them. They weren't shopping around for the cheapest deal. They were probably already in the Bang & Olufsen shop buying a hi-fi that cost more than my car. And then said, oh, hold on, we could do with a little radio for the kitchen as well. Yeah, that black and silver one over there, that looks all right, that'll do. Throw one of those in as well. I mean, I can appreciate the quality that's got into this. It's a basic feature set, but what it does well. The construction of this is very good overall. Of course, we've got a few issues now due to age, but you can feel it's a weighty, solid, well put together piece of equipment. But that said, I don't see where all the extra money went beyond the price of, say, one of those sharp radio cassettes. Yeah, it's better, it's got better quality, but it's not all that. Then again, it doesn't really matter now what something did or didn't cost in 1989. We're not in 1989 anymore. I mean, back then I would have been looking for a boombox with as many features as I could possibly get on it. Every gadget and latest piece of tech going. But now that I'm as old as dirt, I can start to appreciate simple things a little bit more. Things that just do a basic job, but do it to a decent standard. And this is one of those things. And while my larger and more capable boomboxes are currently sitting in storage because there's just no room for them in the house, this smaller, more slimline model, well, less featured, is the kind of thing that I can find a place for. So there's something to be said for simplicity. Okay, I found out what's happened to this door. There was a chap on Patreon who said his had done the same thing, and there was another video of somebody repairing it. So I'll link you to that video because that's where I found out exactly what the problem was. But I'm going to repair mine in the same way. So I need to just push these arms in from the side, I believe, to get this out. There we go. And this is also a good opportunity to give the interior a little bit of a dust. Okay, so looking at the makeup of this door, we've got the inner matte black plastic section and then the outer glossy cover. And these two sections are stuck together with double-sided adhesive tape. And for some reason, over the years, the outer section has slipped down in relation to the inner part, leaving this large lip at the bottom. And that's what's catching on the rest of the case when you open the cassette door. So what I need to do now is very carefully separate these two halves without breaking anything, and then reattach the outer part further up. I don't know if it's supposed to have any lip on it at all, or perhaps it's supposed to be half this width. We'll figure that out once we get it into its two parts, but that's going to be the tricky section. So let's get on with it. So I've assembled a selection of spudgers and similar to help me separate the two halves, but the first thing I think that's worth doing is heating this up a little bit to try and soften the glue on that adhesive tape. Right, considering how well those two things were stuck together, I'm surprised it slipped. I mean, this stuff's really very sticky still. But yeah, slip it did, so we'll have to make sure we pop this on the right way around. Of course, the window goes opposite the gap in here. And just need to clean all this mess off now, which is going to take a while. It's got on the back of the window there. And hopefully pop it back together again. I've got myself some double-sided tape for the purpose of doing this, so yeah, boring bit now, getting rid of this stuff. It's taking me forever this. I'm going to try these. This removes stuff I use for getting medical plasters off from my diabetic sensors. It's very good, but I'm just wondering if it has any effect on plastic. That's why I'm using it on this inside part first, just in case it stains anything, because this is the bit you don't see from the outside. Yeah, it's definitely shifted it, so let's just wipe that off and see if it's affected the plastic. No, looks okay. Right, carry on. Right, well that side's adhesive free, but it's this part that I'm a little bit more worried about because we've got this window here. I don't want this going misty. Let me just do it on the corner perhaps, just see what happens. Yeah, this side you can see it seems to be rubbing a bit of the paint off, so I've got to be careful with that. Won't use that anymore. Even WD-40 is struggling with this. It's normally pretty good at cutting through adhesive residue, but it's not doing so great here. It's just taking a lot of elbow grease. Okay, well that was a deeply unpleasant experience. Let's never speak of it again. But after a considerable amount of time, I have managed to get this nice and clean. So I can pop some double-sided adhesive on here. But first we need to see where these two things should line up. Now initially I thought they might be flush at the bottom like so. However, you might be able to make out here the bottom of these holes is visible if I was to do it that way. And also I'm cutting off the bottom of the window through to the cassette. So it needs to be lower than that. So I'd suggest that maybe the window needs to be dead center, equidistant from the top and bottom. That does seem to line up better there. Just leaves a tiny little lip at the bottom. So I think that's what we're going to go for. Hopefully we get this right first time. Don't fancy peeling all this off again. Okay, not the neatest job, but it's not going to be seen either, so it doesn't matter too much. Right, so there we go. Good as new. Nowadays, you can always find someone trying to sell you a piece of regular old tech at a ridiculous amount of money. I don't know if they're ever successful, but with things like this, I think you're likely to find these at a house clearance or a car boot sale. And if you were at a car boot sale and you saw one of those old sharp models that were originally £50 being offered at a tenner, and then one of these things that somebody's offering at, say, 50 quid, I'd go for one of these every time. Which then means that, to me at least, this really is worth 5 times the price of the Sharp after all these years. Anyway, that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.